Hey you guys, let's talk tactics. Everyone loves tactics. I've got a game, an 8-minute blitz game that I picked out from the open challenges against a player rated just over 1100. And I'm only rated just over 1300 at blitz at the moment. I'm finding that I do a lot better when I have time to think and really try and find the best move. I'm a much better player. So anyway, what are tactics in chess? Tactics are usually combinations of moves that you see that allow you to secure an advantage or get an advantage over your opponent. So it might be to force them into a worse position, it might be to capture material, all those kinds of things, or even lead to a checkmate, for example. So there's quite a few in this game. It's not the longest game in the world, it's about 25 moves. Now v4, e5, knight to c3, obviously the Vienna at the moment, and the Vienna gambit is played. Takes, e5, and the knight has to move back. Now he's already used over 30 seconds of his time. I've used 5 seconds because it's my opening and I know it. So now knight to f3. This is not tactical. d6. Now there was a possibility here of captures en passant, but then that's just inviting the queen out into the board, and I doubt c wants to take there. But anyhow, so I play d4, just solidifying my centre. Right, this is all positional play. I'm trying to occupy or get control over key squares and squares in my opponent's half of the board. And now bishop comes out. So this is now a tactic, right? Or kind of. I mean, it's pinning the knight. A pin is a tactic. And it means that this knight cannot move anywhere because black can capture my queen. So what it's doing is it's reducing white's options in the game. So if I had ideas of doing something with this knight, I can forget about those ideas right now, unless I want to lose my queen. So I capture the spare pawn. Captures are good. And so now we're equal. We've lost a pawn each, but look at the difference in development. 1 pawn, 1 piece on black side. Okay, so this is a score of 1. It's got 1 piece out on the board. I've got boom, boom, 3. And I've got 2 pawns out on the board. That's the difference. Okay, so we've got a nice lead. Knight to c6. Bishop comes out, pinning the knight. Now we have a double pinned knight situation. The difference is that my knight is in a relative pin. Okay, so it means it's kind of pinned. It means if I move this knight, then I will lose material. This knight, however, is in an absolute pin, which means that behind that knight there is a king, and the knight now cannot move legally because you cannot make a move that puts yourself into check. Okay, so just the difference there. Now the knight is still pinned, but it's not an absolute pin anymore. It's now a relative pin because now if the knight moves, it's only a queen that gets lost. Okay. So now I castle, getting my rook onto the open F file, and adding another defender to this knight, so it's now defended 1, 2, 3 times. Bishop comes out in front of the king, maybe fixing to castle sometime soon. Now the knight isn't going to be able to come out to there though. This is the problem with this advanced pawn here on e5. So maybe the knight's going to have to come to there, but if the knight goes to there, I could snatch it with my bishop and pretty much force black to recapture with a g-pawn, and that would leave a big hole. So black is already on the back foot to some extent. Now, queen to d3. Why that move? Well, one thing is it breaks the pin. So the queen was here, now she's moved to here, and now the knight can move. Right? The knight has options now. Can move without losing the queen. Okay, so a tactical idea, giving myself more options. And f6 is now pushed, which is an interesting little move. Doesn't do anything to improve this bishop. Doesn't do anything to improve this knight, which couldn't really have gone to that square anyway. And now I capture the bishop. Okay, so my thinking is, capture the pawn. My thinking is, look at my king, it is castled. Okay, so I've castled, which is worth 2 development points. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'm doing quite well. Black, 1, 2, 3, 4, hasn't castled. Okay, so black has a big It's behind big time in development. Now, when your opponent's that far behind in development, when your opponent's king is sitting in the middle of the board, you want to open up the middle of the board. You want to get your rooks in line with the king or a queen in line with the king. You want to remove material that's around that king and expose that king. Okay, so now we have knight captures, which I think is the best move. It doesn't expose the king, which is what would have happened if bishop had taken. And pawn captures would have led to isolated pawns, 2 isolated pawns. Plus, knight captures comes with development. All right. And now black is actually in a position to castle onto castle king side and place his rook straight on the open, the now fully open f file as well. So I get in first and I stick my a rook onto e1, and now black decides to castle queen side. Okay. Now, here is a tactic. Okay. Let's see if you can spot it. The tactic is one that I categorize as the overworked defender. Okay. Now, these pawns are important pawns for black. Black does not want to move these pawns if he can help it. Okay. These are there. These two in particular are defended by the king. The king might want to come to b8 at some point where it's defending 3 pawns. Okay. And that means that is actually good for the king's defense. Should these pawns move, then you might find there are open lines towards the king. And that then creates the possibility of checks. And checks are very forcing. Checks can be very tactical, right? Because your opponent has to get out of check. It doesn't have a choice. Now, one good thing to get into the practice of, I mean, that you can use the goldfish method, okay? Draw lines. So I just right click and drag, okay? Everything that's defending anything else, okay? You can draw defensive arrows to say that's defending that, it's defending that. I highlight anything in red that is undefended. So currently this pawn on g7 is undefended. But one thing I notice is that this bishop here is defended only once by the queen. Okay. Now, queen is also defending this knight. This knight is also defended by the b pawn. So, if I capture the knight, then black is in a pickle. He's in a quandary. Because if he recaptures with a queen, who's defending that? Okay, but if he recaptures with the b pawn, then we've got like queen a6 check, and this bishop's still looming down over there. We've got pawns that could come flying in, got a knight that could come flying in. Could look unpleasant. So that's what I do. I go ahead and capture the knight on c6. My opponent thinks for 25 seconds now and recaptures with bam 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 the queen and loses a bishop. But I guess he thought about that and thought that I'd rather lose a bishop than lose my key defensive pawns. And, you know, I don't necessarily disagree with that plan. Okay, now rook to e8. Now here comes another tactical idea. All right, we're up in material. I'm up a full knight at this point in time. And so when you are up in material, it generally makes sense to engage in equal trades. So rook takes e8, check, queen takes e8. And now, knight to e5, okay? So knight to e5 it's attacking this bishop, yeah, right? But it's also blocking off the open file that the queen's on. I just want to be careful. I don't need to give black any opportunities to attack. And right now, my pawns are quite robust on this side of the board. They might be getting ready to launch a pawn storm up there, yeah? But let's just block off this. And also, if I can remove my opponent's only bishop, we've got a nice open board, then that would probably be in my favour. I'd be the one left with a bishop and a queen, and black would be out of bishops. The queen now moves forwards. I now put my queen onto the e-file. Okay, and at this point in the game, I'm not really finding the best moves, but then it's a blitz game. And blitz games are not about finding the best moves. which is why I generally recommend that you don't play Blitz if you're learning chess. Okay, anyway, so yeah, at this point in the game, maybe I should have just gone ahead and grabbed the bishop and then knight takes, something like that. Could have been okay. But I lined up with the queen here. Now, one thing you've got to realize again is, and get into the habit of this, the queen is not defended. So for example, let's say the king moves to here, right? I then have a tactic. Knight to c6, check, if the king's on there, right? And yeah, you can take it, but then I take the queen and win. All right, that's called a double attack. It's a discovered attack. Okay, so I'm moving one piece, which comes with an attack, and I'm clearing the way at the same time for another attack, which happens to be against an undefended piece. So one of this issue here is having the queen there, undefended, is a lack of coordination of pieces. It means the pieces aren't all defending each other, protecting each other, and working together. That queen actually is a target now that it's undefended, right? So it was defended here. She's now moved to a square where she is not defended, and that's important. So I move my queen here. Now the bishop gets out of trouble, and now I move my queen over to this g3 square. Now there's a couple of ideas here. I'm not really attacking this pawn, right? Really what my idea is, should this knight ever move, I might have ideas of bishop takes there, and queen coming in behind the bishop with a checkmate, right? Obviously right now that pawn is guarded by the black queen. Okay, now I have g6, and I just push a3. I'm just starting to creep my pawns up that side of the board. Okay, now rook to f8 here. Maybe kind of lining up with my bishop and my rook, but I'm not too concerned. I'm a piece in front at this time. So now I move my queen back to e3. Now renewing my thoughts about capturing that queen, or at least coming in with a threat. Okay, now knight comes in. Okay, pretty simple. Knight takes knight, pawn takes knight. And now, instead of just capturing the free pawn, which I could have done, I hit the queen. Hit the queen with my bishop. Okay, now, where can this queen go? So she can't go there or there or there because of my bishop. Right? She can't capture the bishop because it's defended by my queen. She can't go there or there because of my knight. Okay, so this queen and can't go obviously there or there or there because of my pawns. So the queen's actually only got a couple of options here. The queen now drops back to e6. Now, rook takes rook. And this is pinning the queen on the king. So the queen can't move. So queen takes, rook is forced. And now I grab the pawn. Okay, now, here's another potential tactic. This knight might move. If this knight moves, right, maybe I can grab myself the bishop, which is, again, undefended. So the bishop now moves to f5, hitting my queen. I move to one side. Now, you might think, aha, Hunter, you've hung a pawn there, but I haven't, because this bishop is actually pinned, okay? Because if the bishop moves, queen takes queen, and again, the queen is undefended. So the bishop cannot move. What's more, look at the layout of these pieces, right? This is a pinned piece, so this introduces the possibility of another tactic, okay? Which is called attacking the pinned piece, right? So we have the idea of g4. The pawn, if you can attack a pinned piece with a pawn, usually a winning idea. So the bishop's worth 3, the pawn's worth 1. I go here. If the bishop takes, I take the queen, and it's all over. I go here. Let's say the queen gets out of the way. I simply capture the bishop with my pawn. I have one material. So the queen now moves out of the way to break the pin, which is not a bad move. Okay. Queen is also looking at this, which is defended by my queen currently, but maybe I want to do something with my queen. So I just push c3 now and get my pawns into a nice dark squared pawn chain. What's nice about this is that this bishop cannot touch these pawns. Okay. Now, if all my pawns have been on light squares, that also has its advantages in that the bishop cannot move through that chain. But it might be able to, for example, attack the rearmost pawn, which is something that is very common in these kind of endgames. Okay, so now queen moves here, and now it's time for another idea, queen to f3. So here what I'm doing is I'm threatening a trade of queens. And a trade of queens at this point would not favour black. Black has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pawns and a bishop. Okay, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pawns and a bishop and a knight. So this would be a losing endgame for black. Black now comes up with an idea of a kind of barrage. Okay, attacking my queen, a high value piece, with a lower value piece, the bishop, which is of course defended by black's queen. But this is actually a blunder, I think, because it now opens black up, and black has not considered the first two rules of chess club, which are, is my king safe? And rule 2, no really, is my king safe? Okay, because queen f8 now, and the king is in check. Okay, how can we break the check? There's only one way. Right, the king can't go there because knight's covering that square. King cannot go anywhere on the back rank because my queen's on the back rank. Okay, there's only one possible move, and it would be queen to there. But look, queen and bishop are both looking at that square, and then it will be queen takes d8 and checkmate. So there you go, little whistle-stop tour of some basic chess tactics. Hope you've picked up one or two things, or just refreshed one or two ideas from that. Thanks for your time, appreciate your support, and I'll see you soon.